Good morning and welcome to your Rangers Review morning briefing on Monday, July 21st. I'm Chris Jack and I'm in the hot seat for a change. And for the first time in quite some time, I'm joined by Stevie Clifford. I think it's our first time on a pod since our last talking point. There may well be one of them coming this week. But we're together again on the morning briefing. Stevie, how are we?
Together, a week is questionable, but certainly together, nevertheless. Yeah, mate, I'm good. It's all the talking's all over, bar one more day, isn't it? And then the Rangers roller coaster 2025-26 begins. And yeah, there's plenty to discuss and look forward to, isn't there? I hope everybody's having a good Monday morning and a good start to the week. It is dreak, Chris. It is dreak. It is not nice.
It's very close as well, very very clammy today. So it could be a warm press conference room up at the training ground later on. I'll be heading up to Auchenhowie later for the Rangers presser. A later start, 3:30 for the player and 4:00 for the manager. Hoping that's not going to become a regular occurrence. I have to say. And Panathinaikos are 5:30 at Ibrox. So as always, you can keep up to date with the full videos, full Q&A, and all the latest news across the site and across the show. Before we get into it, Stevie, we have to give a shout out, as always, of course, to Willow's Fencing, our morning briefing sponsors. Go and check out their site for all your gardening needs. In terms of needs, Stevie, Russell Martin needs a win tomorrow night. The title of the show, or the theme of the show, is "Are Rangers Champions League ready?" Don't answer it with a yes or no, but I'll put that question to you first and foremost.
Yes and no. So I wrote about it this morning, actually, in my article, Chris. It's due out for Rangers Review this morning. And it's a difficult one because it would be extremely naive not to sit here and recognise the red flags that there is behind some of the things and some of the selections and players that we'll need to rely on. And I think that's the biggest issue. You're having to rely on players that have consistently in previous seasons not delivered. And that's probably the biggest fear amongst the support. And I think that's maybe telling, but then you've got to balance it with the excitement of having a new manager, having a new style, having a new philosophy, having 7 new players potentially available. So there's positives and negatives about everything. We're going to find out if they're ready tomorrow, aren't we? That's the biggest question. Ibrox is a sellout, as far as I believe. There might be a few straggling tickets left, but it's pretty much a sellout done. It'll be expectant. It'll be noisy. Does he need a win? Yeah, of course he does. There's a lot riding on tomorrow, not just Champions League, but what happens in the Europa if we don't get through and stuff like that. And I looked at the draw, which will be made early this morning, and there's no gimmies in there at all, Chris. There's no teams where you think, oh, we'll take them. We could be reunited with Fenerbahce again. That wouldn't be easy. So there's a lot to do for Rangers tomorrow night, and we've just got to hope that they're ready.
I think that a lot of that comes down to obviously the business that has been done, but obviously the work that the manager has done on the training ground. We were both down at St George's the week before last and given some really good access to that training camp. I thought the manager came across really well in an interview that he sat down and did with us, and also in that training session. I thought it was really a nice touch from him to allow us that level of access. Now, normally, certainly at the training session today and every other one that I can remember, the guys get the first 10-15 minutes just as the players are going through the warm-ups and they're running around some mannequins, and that's kind of it. We get a real insight into what that team is hopefully going to look like, and some of the ideas that he's trying to get across. It is still really, really early. How much of that do you expect to see tomorrow night? It will look very different from a Barry Ferguson Rangers team. It will look very, very different from a Philippe Clement Rangers team. How much will it look like a Russell Martin Rangers team first time out?
I think it'll need to look different because neither of those two. I'm not going to include Barry in that because Barry was put in a situation where he was having to pick up the pieces, more or less as a favour to the club for the last few months. And I know that there'll be people out there who have their opinion on Barry Ferguson, but mine was always that he was doing a job that he maybe not even wanted to be in at that time. As for it being different to Philip Clement, I'd certainly hope it was different to Philip Clement. It will need to be if it's going to be, anywhere near successful. I would expect it to be a lot different. I would expect Rangers to have a really high line. I would expect Rangers to try and dominate the ball. I'd expect Rangers to take the game to Panathinaikos quite early and try and establish their own game plan onto it. But it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult. I think the biggest thing is, Chris, and where I am with it and what I talk about in the article is that there was so much work to be done that it was never ever going to get done in one window, and it was never going to be a situation where Rangers could get 15 players in and 15 players out easily. I don't think that was ever possible. And what they've done, and I remember we talked about it on the on the talking point, almost called it the tipping point again. I do that all the time. I was hoping for 4 or 5 by the time we played Panathinaikos. We're sitting and we end up having 6 if you include Lyle Cameron to make that 7. And I think we've done remarkably well in the transfer market, considering how slow it is and considering the business that's we're waiting to get out the door as well. So there's, as I said, there's positives and negatives to everything. But I do think we'll see a Russell Martin style tomorrow. I don't think we'll see it in full flow. I think that'll take 3-4 months, whether we like that or not, until hopefully we're in a position where we're rocking and rolling under him. But I do think you'll see the makings of subtle changes and things that he wants to do, formation wise and selection wise. So they've had 4 or 5 bounce games now. They've had that game against Bruges. So I know that people say that we're undercooked in terms of friendly games, but we should have played enough minutes now where they have an idea of a style and enough training sessions that they've went through to get that as well. So yeah, I definitely think we'll see a very big change for us. It's going to be a huge change actually when you consider how it's going to look in the build-up and that desire to move the ball quickly and get it forward quickly. I don't think we've experienced that in a long time under managers. It was always possession-based and we can work it back and forward. The old infamous horseshoe, as he used to call it, it even became that under Philip Clement. So I would hope and expect this style to be a lot different under Russell Martin. And I definitely think we'll see the beginnings of it. Whether or not we're going to be ready is another question.
You mentioned the lack of friendlies there, a point that Si makes there about the number of games that have been played. There's also a lack of public friendlies and a lack of games for the fans to get to. But as you've touched on there, a number of behind closed doors games. I don't think Rangers will be undercooked. Now, if it comes to 10 o'clock tomorrow night and they've lost the game 2-0, that will be the accusation. It'll be, why have they not played as many games? Why did they not play a higher calibre than TNS? Why did they not play a higher calibre than Barnsley or Hamilton? Ultimately, at this stage, I think it's about getting minutes into players. They need to get the fitness up. But I think we saw, again, in that session that we witnessed in the highlights of the game that came out against Barnsley, you saw what the manager is trying to do. And I think the Bruges game booed off at half-time, and it took a wee bit of... It will take the fans a bit of time to get used to this new way of playing, this new system, some of these new players. I actually think it's better to have these games behind closed doors than have so much people going a bit OTT on it and so much being read into team lineups and who's playing the most minutes and who's playing where. Use these games as what they are, exercises, just to get people up to a certain level. So for me, that's not really a massive concern. Come kick off tomorrow night, obviously, as you mentioned earlier in the show, Ibrox will be full. Ibrox will be expectant. What do you want to see first and foremost outside of a 3-0 Rangers victory to make next week in Athens almost a formality? What do you want to see from the team lineup and the Russell Martin side?
I'm going to answer that just in a minute, if that's all right. But you said something there that I found quite interesting, that if things don't go well tomorrow and Panathinaikos were to win 2-0, Rangers fans would be very quick to say, we haven't done enough friendly work, we haven't done enough, we're undercooked, etc. The issue that Russell Martin's got, and the biggest problem is he's got so many accusations waiting to get thrown at him. when it comes to his selection, there'll be people that, and we know it as well as anybody else, that cannot wait to say, told you about Jack Butland, told you about James Tavernier, told you about John Souttar, Kieran Dowell, Danilo, Enoch Cortez, anyone, rinse and repeat. But the issue that Russell Martin's got is that he was never ever going to be able to make, 20 changes in and out to that squad, which he might have ideally wanted. So this is going to take a number of windows to fix really poor management in the last few years. So with regard to that, I think that in many ways Russell Martin's on a hiding to nothing, because there's going to be people there that don't fancy him and cannot wait to stick the boot in if things go wrong, and that's just life at Rangers, unfortunately. With regards to your question, difficult, because I've got to be honest. When it comes to tomorrow night, and I've written about this as well, that there is a huge part of me that's concerned just when it comes to the players and things that we've just mentioned. So what do I want to see? I want to see an aggression on the ball. I want to see us move it quickly. I want to see us try and get it forward quickly. I want to see things that I've seen in the Bruges friendly game, things that we've seen in the Barnsley game, where they manage to work it so that they free the eights in the middle. I think if you can get Diamande, Raskin, Rothwell on the ball like that, hopefully Asgard makes it. Doesn't sound like he will. But if you can get those players in and free that, that kind of space, then you've got the opportunity for shots and things like that. I want to see more from Oscar Cortez. I want to see more from Danilo. And again, this is where, as much as we're excited about the new players coming in, and I am, because it's new signings, we're always excited, Chris. We're owed a debt of how to word this properly. We're actually owed performances by the guys that have let us down. See the ones that I've mentioned, and I won't go through it again, but these guys need to step up and prove that they want to be Rangers players as well, Chris. So I expect them to do that. I expect James Tavernier to do that. I expect Jack Butland to rediscover that he's allowed to use his hands. I expect Danilo to step up the way, he's put in a lot of work in pre-season. He's been training out in Brazil on his holidays on the beach, and we've seen all that stuff. Then it's great scoring behind closed doors and bounce games. Go and really want it. Show that desire. Oscar Cortez, you're a £4 million signing. You missed the whole of last year, more or less. Go and prove that you can play for this football club. That's what I want to see. That's the kind of desire. And that's the first thing that I want to see in my performance tomorrow night, is the desire of the players wanting it. Because if you get that, Chris, and they buy into it, then you're 3/4 of the way there already, because the style and the skills and that will come as they get more comfortable. They've got to want it. They've got to stand up and want to be Rangers players. And that starts tomorrow night.
You mentioned the injury situation. I think also the main one that people will be expecting or hoping an answer on at the press conference later is Thello Asgard. I think people almost, if you didn't laugh, you'd cry last week when that news came out. That's just typical Rangers, isn't it? You find a guy that the manager is really excited to have. You find a guy that the fans are excited to have in the squad that looks as if he could be, and he will go on to be an important part of the squad. Day one, game one, and he's potentially not there. So hopefully the manager can provide a more positive update on him earlier on. He touched a wee bit about it in his RTV interview over the last couple of days, saying it's going to be touch and go. If he doesn't make the first game, should make the second game. So hopefully that's not going to be a long-term one for him. If he doesn't play, who for you takes that spot? I've seen a number of people bouncing teams about social media over the course of the weekend. Wide areas for me still an area of concern. Again, manager touched on in that interview that Gassama won't be ready to play the full 90 minutes. Who for you takes those wide areas, and how important, again, having seen how we think this team could shape up, how important are those wide areas going to be against Panathinaikos?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, I think you're right. I think they're massively important. Two, I also think you're right. I don't think those wide areas are anywhere near the quality that we require, which we can kind of discuss a wee bit as well. But I think the midfield three picks itself. Rothwell is going to be our six. I think that's quite clear from how he trained and what we saw, as well as what we saw from the behind closed doors games. And by what I mean by what we saw we haven't saw limited reports back from them. I think, just to be clear, in case anybody thinks that we were sitting with access, we certainly were not. So Rothwell's sitting, and I think Diamandi and Raskin will take the 2 forward positions in front of them. And then wide positions, I think that I think you're looking at Dowell starting on the wide right. I think that's pretty clear from what we've seen so far. And then it's a toss-up, isn't it, on the left-hand side? I don't think... Here's a bit of a complaint of mine. I wanted to see more from Oscar Cortez against Bruges.
Mm-hmm.
He was one-on-one a couple of times, and he wanted to go and take his man, and he never really done it. And I realise that he's got to get his confidence up, he's got to get his match fitness up and things like that. Is Finlay Curtis better placed, more athletic, got the ability to finish and stuff like that, a bit more ruthless? Will he therefore make that position? And it's a hell of an ask of a young boy that's barely started for Rangers Football Club. Danilo will play as your 9, but the other side of that is potentially, Chris, you could then have Cortez, Gassama, Igaman, and Dessers all ready to come on at 60 minutes. Now, I hope at 60 minutes we're quite comfortable, but if we're not and we're needing a lift in the fan base and on the pitch, then you've got 4 really good options there. So it's a catch-22. I think Russell Martin might play a slightly long game, and I think he might go with Finlay Curtis and Kieran Dowell. And Dowell then job on the right-hand side will be to make sure that he's freeing up the guys in the middle. And you would want a big performance from Mohamed Diamandi, wouldn't you? You've also got, by the way, I should also mention, you've then got the likes of Lyle Cameron and Nadeem Bayrami that can come on, and you've got plenty of threat in there. And Bayrami's another one that needs to show the hunger and desire that he showed to go make that goal in the Bruges game. So there's plenty of options, but there's probably not an outstanding one, which is Russell Martin's biggest issue. So we just need to wait and see what he goes with. I honestly think he'll go Curtis, Dowell, and Danilo with Diamandi, Raskin, and Rothwell. I think the back 4 picks itself. I think he'll go Tav at right back. He'll go Giga and Suter with Aarons at left back and Jack Butland in goals. Now, what that tells you also is, I think he's come in and had one look at our left backs and thought, nope, that's not happening, because Max Aarons was bought to be a right back. We all know that, and he's now playing on the left. So that's a real indictment of where Ridvan Yilmaz's future at the football club is. Yefty I can understand, because Jeffy's a young lad and he's learning, and it might take him time and the style and everything else. I understand that. And he's potentially still got a future, although he needs to do more. But I think he's come in and had one look at the left back options and the availability and everything else and went, no, Aarons can play there until we can fix that area. So that's how I expect us to go tomorrow night, Chris. I don't think there'll be many shocks. Asgard not being there and picking up, was a dead leg or something in that game against Dunfermline is fairly typical of our luck. But it was never one that was serious. It was never one that was anything. It just probably came too soon. And I think, they're probably being too careful around him with regards to tomorrow night. He probably could play a part in tomorrow night, but we'll see how it goes. I would expect he probably won't play in Russell Martin's kind of conversation of he'll be ready for the away game is most likely where we are. And it's a shame, because I don't know about you, I certainly thought he was a standout at the training in St George's, that's for sure.
Like the other big issue, if you like, another thing to come out of that interview that the manager did on RTV was a couple of well-kent faces, if you like, being in and around the club over the last few days. John Gregg and Sir Alex Ferguson both joining the squad for a look around Murray Park and joining them for training, having a chat with the manager. That type of experience, that type of knowledge, that's a great avenue for Russell Martin to be able to tap into. Now, he's been around this club during the loan spell. He knows the club, he knows people around about it. But to have 2 guys like that coming in to sit down for a coffee and a chat, that must be a real, not just a nice moment for him, given their standing in the game, but it says a lot about his standing as now being Rangers manager. You don't get that every day, and if anything was ever going to highlight the the position that he's in as Rangers manager, as Rangers head coach, to have two guys like that coming in for a chat, that must mean quite a lot to him, you would think.
I think we could throw Richard Gough in there as well, with regard to stature of the football club and what he's achieved. Look, this is going to sound whatever way you want it, but I think it's true. People talk about Russell Martin being a great guy and a really nice guy, and how much of a people person he is, and the players love him and everything else. You can see why. We've been in his company. He's a fantastic guy, very laid back, very there's a confidence about him, but not an arrogance. There's a strictness about him, but not in any way overruling. There's a self-deprecating kind of, he likes a laugh. He always talks about how I can't believe he made it as a footballer and that kind of stuff. And he likes to have a laugh, doesn't he? He's a really nice guy. And it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that people are gravitating towards him, especially people with the stature of the three that we've mentioned. When you talk about players being, or managers being, well liked and people willing them and wanting them to do. But it'll do the players no harm in listening to guys like Gough, Greg, and Sir Alex to say this is what is expected at our football club, and this is what I want to see, and this is, I think everyone's desperate for Rangers to get back to winning ways and to be able to fulfil their kind of expectation that we all believe in. So, no, I really enjoyed it, really, especially from, John Greig, selfishly you probably expect, Richard Gough selfishly you probably expect, as legends of the football club. Sir Alex Ferguson's a wee bit different, obviously steeped in Manchester United. He's not been able to, Rangers are his boyhood love, so to speak. So having that and him spending time at the museum first and foremost, him, and I actually spoke to Robert Boyle, Rab, as you will know, was massive behind the scenes with doing the museum and along with Joe Morrison, the curator as well. And Sir Alex Ferguson had a big input in the museum, and I didn't know this until I spoke to Rab about it, that Sir Alex actually had quite a say and gave a lot of advice on how the museum should be laid out and things like that. So that was his first time, just, I think it was probably 5 or 6 weeks ago when he first seen it, and then he was invited back to the Auchenhowie, to the training ground and things like that. So I think it's great, arguably, one of the best ever British managers, certainly Scottish managers, that's for sure, Sir Alex Ferguson. So to get that kind of experience sitting with the players and speaking to the players and telling them the demands, and I would have hoped he would have delivered it in his traditional style as well. So I really enjoyed hearing that. Really enjoyed that.
It wouldn't be a morning briefing if we did not discuss transfers. There's been another round of rumours over the course of the weekend. We'll start with someone who it looked like was heading out the door, should probably still be heading out the door, and Robin Proper. There are some quotes from the FC20 technical director Jan Struer has come out this morning speaking about the Proper situation, and a slightly ominous final sentence in this quote, shall we say. He said, "We really missed him. Rangers bought him at a top Scottish club. You can't compete with them. Now there's a new manager at Rangers. He might play less, then he might be able to return. But he'll want to wait and see first if he actually plays less. We have to decide, do we wait for that or do we wait to see what happens next?" Stevie, what happens next with Robin Proper?
I need to. I'm not allowed to swear or anything. Joshua has told me about this. I would like it if he, along with 7 or 8 others, would politely leave the football club as quickly as possible, because they don't have a future at Rangers. Shake his hand, say thanks very much for your efforts, but you're not going to make it here, and quite honestly, you're not really wanted. So there's no time for sentiment, Chris. Ben Davies, Robin Proper, Jose Cifuentes, Rabi Matondo. There's various players in there that can leave this football club. Clinton Nsiala, Leon King, arguably, Ross McCausland. These are players that quite honestly are not going to make it here and need to move on for their own sake. So Ridvan Yilmaz as well, you can throw in there. So that was 7 or 8 rhymed off quite easily, that if they left tomorrow, none of us would miss. The other thing is as well, Chris, is that these guys are stopping us. And this isn't an attack on them, because they've got contracts and things like that. But it's absolutely no surprise to me that because we've shipped these guys out, that we're not getting others in. He's probably had a look at the left back situation, for example, like we discussed, and looked at Yilmaz and wants to sell him. So if he goes, I think you could quite possibly see, a move for a left back coming straight in quite quickly. You might then see that Owen Beck rumour that persisted and is quiet and suddenly comes in. Likewise, if the number 9 position, could they get rid of one of the ones up front and then bring in somebody else? I'm quite sure that that's exactly what Russell Martin wants to do, especially when you look at Robin Proper, Leon King, Ben Davies, and wanting another centre back in the middle of that. They'll want them out before they can get others in. And I think that's quite reasonable. You can't have a squad, the squad at the moment is 30 odd players, and there's 20 of them not going to be used on a match day in the starting 11. So we need to genuinely cut that quite down quite a bit. And as I said, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever you want to call it, would leave tomorrow and not be missed. It is fairly ominous with Robin Proper. It's now 10 days, 12 days since we sat with the manager and he told us that he'd accepted a bid. That not being accepted or not being finalised so far is kind of ominous a wee bit. But if Robin needs any confirmation of his Rangers' future and the games he's going to play or not play, etc., we should be giving it in the politest way and be saying, you don't have a future at this football club. You won't play games. Time to move on, I think, and go back to 20, especially if you're getting $1.5 million. That's almost like a lottery win for Rangers when it comes to how it's worked out for Robin Proper. So I think you saw it in Bruges in the friendly game that he's not going to suit this style of play. He's not going to be able to do it either. So with all due respect, as I said, it's not a criticism of these guys. These are here. We paid them the money. We've been the ones giving out these contracts and things, but Rangers really need to start making a dent and getting these guys out the door so that we can then rejuvenate the squad a wee bit more.
I think that ties into this one from Gerald that he said about Rangers perhaps speculating to accumulate. I would say they have done that this season, or they have done a lot of business, perhaps not as much as the fans wanted ahead of this first game, perhaps not as much as we maybe expect ahead of the first game, but the manager has been back to go and get a number of these guys over the line as quickly as possible. And as you've outlined there, Rangers can't carry a squad of 30 plus players for several weeks. It makes no sense in a financial manner, and it makes no sense in a football sense either. You can't have that number of guys in and around the dressing room having to go through so many different schedules to keep them all. There's guys clearly going through the first team schedule, guys that are on the fringes, guys that are nowhere near it. You have to still be professional with them. You have to still give them facilities and give them a proper way of training and getting themselves ready. So I think Rangers, they've done quite a lot so far. They do have an awful lot of business still to do though, and time will tell whether that's actually possible or not, or when that will actually happen. Another one that came in, wanted to end on this one before we go from Seafood and Eat It with his well wishes for Paul Gascoigne. I'm sure that's a sentiment that everyone on the show will echo, and certainly us, Stevie. I actually mentioned Gaza to Derek on the show a couple of weeks ago. His name came up, and he's the only Rangers legend that I think I've not met. I've been in pressers and trips with Walter and Ali. Been privileged to meet John Gregg, met Sandy Jardine, all these guys. Loudrup, you can rhyme off all these guys that this job has made me privileged enough to meet. Paul Gascoigne's the one that I've not had a chance to meet, but hopefully he's on the mend, and we have some positive news on him soon.
Absolutely. Paul Gascoigne, growing up watching him was an absolute privilege for Rangers Football Club. He was an outstanding footballer for us. Obviously he's had his troubles off the park, and you just want him to get well and settle and have a life that he can enjoy and be well in. So yeah, certainly wish him all the best, Chris, that's for sure. And yeah, it's a sad thing because you're kind of worried about anytime you see his name being mentioned, you immediately go to worry, don't you? So absolutely wish him all the best and hopefully a very speedy recovery for Paul.
As I say, that's a sentiment I'm sure will be echoed by everyone on everyone on the show this morning. We will end it there. As I mentioned right at the top of the briefing, press conference at Auchenhowie later on. The player at about 3:30, Russell Martin at about 4 o'clock, and then Panathinaikos at 5:45 before they train at Ibrox later on. Of course, keep up to date on our socials and on the show. Stevie, as I mentioned earlier on, his latest column will be on the site over the next hour or so. So go and check that out to fill the void between now and 4 o'clock between the manager speaking. Stevie, thanks for your time as always, and we'll catch up soon.
Yep, we have Talking Point, I think, end of the week, isn't it? So we'll get another one of them recorded, and hopefully we're talking about a very good first outing for Russell Martin and a strong Champions League qualifier performance against Panathinaikos. So that's the task at hand, and good luck to the team and the manager tomorrow night. And hopefully we can do it. It's going to be a good night, Chris. So I look forward to seeing you there, and go from there.
As we always say, Rangers just need to hold up their end of the bargain now. We've done our bit. On that note, we'll see you all tomorrow.